Reminder to everyone that this is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Rodan Ardines, to use this as an educational matter. Good day, sir. Good day, everyone. So, I am Indian Cadet Andaya, and we are the Group 1. So, we are tasked to report about the topic all about global divides, the North and the South. So, the question for us is all about how this global divide developed. So, the global divide, often referred as the North and South division, it is a complex issue with roots in various historical and ongoing factors. So, the division has rounded in two major factors. First is the historical factors. So, the first factor in the historical factors is the colonialism. So, the exploitative nature of colonialism played a significant role in their division. Colonizers extracted resources from their colonies, hindering their economic development and leaving them with limited infrastructure and societal structures. So, European powers colonized much of Africa, Asia, and the Americas from the 16th to the 20th centuries, exploiting the resources and labor for the benefit of the colonizers. So this exploitation laid the groundwork for economic disparities that persist today. So the second factor in the historical factors causing the division of the global of the North and South is that the Cold War. So during this period, mid 20th century, countries were primarily categorized by their alignment with either the Soviet Union or the East or the United States, which is the West. So this political division also reflected economic disparities, with the West generally being more developed. So the unfairness of the situation came to us wherein the division code in the global of the North and the South. The second major factors of the division is that the economic factors. So under the economic factors is the number one, the dependency theory. So this theory argues that developed countries, the North, maintain their dominance by exploiting developing countries, or the South, through unfair trade practices, perpetuating the wealth gap. So the second factor in under the economic factors is the unequal access to resources and technology. So developed countries often have greater access to capital, technology, and advanced infrastructure, contributing to their economic advantages. Addition to that, following decolonization, the structural inequalities ingrained by colonial rule persisted, perpetuated by unequal trade relations, debt burdens, and geopolitical power dynamics. So global trade regimes often favor the interest of industrialized nations, imposing terms that disadvantage countries in the global south and perpetuated dependency on raw materials, exports, and low value added goods. So, moreover, the debt burdens accumulated by many southern nations, often through loans from international financial institutions, constrain their ability to invest in infrastructure, education, and social welfare, exacerbating the divide. So, another factor is the political instability, corruption, and governance challenges further hinder development efforts in the global south. So, undermining social cohesion and economic progress, technological disparities widen the gap. So, as access to and adoption of advancement technologies remain largely concentrated in the global north, exacerbating inequalities in education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. So, meanwhile, environmental degradation, exacerbated by unsustainable resource extraction and climate change, disproportionately impacts the global south, exacerbating vulnerabilities and undermining long-term prospects for sustainable development. So the global divide developed because of the unfairness different countries, most especially in the north. So it develops long time ago uh, when decolonization starts.
So I am Engine Cadet Soriano, Create Van. I am here to continue Andaya's topic. Obviously, we are the partner of this topic, which is how did the global divide develop? So, so the global divide has developed over time due to various factors, including economic disparities, historical inequalities, geopolitical power dynamics, and technological advancement. So, colo- colonialism, unequal trade relationships, and resource exploitation have contributed to the economic gaps between different regions. So, additionally, access to education, healthcare, and technology plays a crucial role in shaping disparities. Globalization has both connected and accentuated these divides, with some regions benefiting more than others. So, geopolitical conflicts and power imbalance also influence the distribution of resource and opportunities on a global scale.
So why the global divides the North and the South? So let's talk about history. So in 1980s, the Brent line was developed as a way of showing on how the world was geographically split into relatively richer and poor nations. So according to my research, that richest countries are almost located in the northern hemisphere, and then the poor countries are mostly located in tropical region in the southern hemisphere. So what is Brent line mean? So what's the purpose of the Brent line? So it is the divisionary line, which is simply separate the rich countries in the north from the poor countries in the south. So it encircles the world at latitude of 30 degrees north. It is cross the North and Central America, north of Africa and India, and then it goes down toward the south, placing Australia and New Zealand above the line. So as you can see in the picture, so there is a Brent line. Then the upper part is more developed country, which is the north hemispheres, and the lower part is less developed country, which is the south hemisphere. So as you can see, the Australia and New Zealand is not part of the south hemisphere, but even they are, as you can see, even they are part of the south hemispheres, but they are rich country, so they are part of more developing country, which is the north hemisphere. So why the global divided the north and south? So the north and south divided as a socio-economic and political categorization of countries. So the Cold War era generation places countries in two distinct groups. So the north and the south is comprises of the first world countries and most second world countries, while the south is comprised of the third world countries. So this categorization ignores that the geographic position of countries, with some countries in the southern hemisphere such as Australia and New Zealand being labeled as part of the north. So as you can see in the pictures, that Australia and New Zealand is part of the north because they are rich countries. So in the year century, global north and south are divided because of the Cold War. That there is what we call alliance of wealth and economy. So that's the reason why it is divided the north hemispheres and the south hemisphere. So the global north is the richest countries that have the most up-to-date technology and resources, while the global south are countries that usually have less resources. So that's the reason why it is the global north and south are divided.
Global North. So when we talk about the Global North countries, we're referring to a bunch of places that are generally considered more developed and economically advanced. First off, the big countries like the United States and Canada, along with Western European countries like France, Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom. These folks who've been at the forefront of modernization for a while now, with strong economies, high standards of living, and a lot of influence on the world stage. Then you've got some other places thrown into the mix too, like parts of Asia that are pretty well developed, such as Japan and places down under like Australia and New Zealand. These countries might not always be the first ones you think of when you hear Global North, but they're definitely in the club. Now, what makes these Global North countries stands out even more is that they're home to some of the most powerful countries in international politics. You've got the G8, which includes countries like the US, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and UK, all of whom pretty much call the shots when it comes to global economics and politics. Plus, out of the five permanent members of the UN Security Council are from the Global North. That means they've got a lot of say in matters of international security and peacekeeping. So, when we talk about the Global North, we're basically talking about the rich, powerful, and influential countries of the world. They've got a lot going for them, but they also got a big responsibility to help out the rest of the world too. Global South. The Global South countries, these are the places that are generally considered less economically developed compared to the Global North. First off, you've got Africa and Latin America. These regions have a lot of countries that are still in the process of building up their economies and improving living standards for their people. They've got plenty of potentials, but they're facing a lot of challenges along the way. Then there's developing Asia, which include places like parts of Middle East. These are areas where you might find rapid growth and development in some places, but also a lot of poverty and inequality in others. It's a mixed bag, but overall they're still catching up to the more developed parts of the world. But that doesn't mean they're not important. These countries have rich cultures, diverse landscapes, and millions of hard-working people trying to make their lives better. And while they might face challenges, they also have a lot of potentials for growth and development in the future. In the global north, about 95% of people have enough food to eat and a place to call home. That's a big deal because it means most folks there don't have to worry too much about where their next meal is coming from or if they'll have a roof over their heads. And let's not forget about infrastructure. In the global north, you'll find out a lot of investments in things like railroad constructions, which helps connect cities and move goods around more efficiently. So yeah, when we say global north, we're talking about the part of the world where things are generally going pretty smoothly in terms of money, resources, and infrastructure. In the global south, only about 5% of people have enough food to eat and a decent place to live. One big thing about the global south is that it often serves as a source of raw materials for the more developed global north. You know, stuff like cotton, which is used to make clothes and all sorts of other things. So while the global south might not have as much wealth or power, it still plays a big role in keeping the global economy running. In fact, some countries in the global south are pretty much entirely dependent on industries like cotton production to make a living. It's a tough spot to be in, but these countries are doing their best to improve their situations and build brighter futures for their people. standards of living in the countries that are considered part of the global south, things can be pretty rough or pretty tough. They might not have all the latest technology, and there could be a lot of political instability, which can make life even harder. Plus, their economies might not be as strong, and they often rely on selling raw materials to wealthier countries in the global north just to keep things going. When we talk about the standards of living in the global north, it's usually pretty good. About 95% of the people there have their basic needs covered, like food and shelter. Plus, they usually have access to decent education systems, which helps them build better lives for themselves and their families. But in the global south, it's a different story. Only around 5% of the population might have access to those basic needs, like food and shelter. So, you can see there's a big gap between the quality of life in these different parts of the world. It's a complex issue, but it's one that's really important to understand if we want to work towards a more fair and just world for everyone. Industrial development. In the global north, you've got countries that are pretty advanced when it comes to making things. They've got a lot of industries and factories churning out all sorts of products. In fact, they make up over 90% of all the manufacturing industries in the world. On the other hand, in the global south, things are a bit different. Many of these countries rely on a lot on stuff they import from the global north. They might not have as much fancy technology, and their industries might not be as developed. So you can see, there's a bit a divide here. The global north is like the powerhouse of the manufacturing, while the global south often ends up providing the raw materials needed for all the manufacturing. It's like one side does the making and the other side provides the stuff to make things with.
Good day or good night, and I'm going to talk about the Third World, which originated during the Cold War era and has evolved over time to encompass various meanings. Initially, to describe used to describe countries that were not aligned with either the Western Bloc, which is the First World, or the Eastern Bloc, that is the Second World. Today, the term carries broader connotations related to economic, social, and developmental challenges. In this, we will explore the historical context, evolving definitions, and contemporary perspectives on the Third World. So, in the historical context, the term the Third World or Third World emerged in the mid 20th century during the Cold War. Countries that did not align with the capitalist West or the communist East were grouped into this category. These nations often faced struggles, post-colonial challenges, and political instability. Next is the evolving definitions. Over time, the term has evolved beyond its original geopolitical context. It is now used to describe countries facing socio-economic challenges, including poverty, underdevelopment, lack of access to healthcare and education, and political instability. The focus has shifted from political alignment to the economic and social well-being of nations. So,
economic challenges. Many countries as labeled third world or the countries that are labeled third world face economic obstacles such as high levels of debt, limited industrialization, and dependence on the primary commodities. Structural issues like corruption and inefficient governance further hindered their economic progress. Next is social and developmental issues. So, social challenges in these nations often include inadequate healthcare, education, and basic infrastructure. The lack of access to clean water and sanitation contributes to health crisis, while education disparities perpetuate cycles of poverty. And next is contemporary perspectives. So in the contemporary discussions, there is a growing awareness of the limitations and stereotypes associated with the third world. Critics argue that it oversimplifies complex issues and reinforces negative stereotypes about certain regions. The term Global South or Developing World is often preferred as a more inclusive and accurate alternative. So, understanding Third World requires a nuanced examination of historical legacies, global economic structures, and the diverse challenges faced by different nations. It is essential to move beyond stereotypes, acknowledging the agency of these nations and working collaboratively towards sustainable and inclusive development on a global scale.
Okay guys, we'll be talking about Global South. So the Global South refers to various countries around the world that are sometimes described as developing, less developed, or undeveloped. So its historical content. So the term Global South emerged in the mid 20th century as a way to describe countries and regions that were economically less developed than their counterparts in the global north. So it originated in the context of Cold War, geopolitics, and the division of nations into the First World. Uh, for example, industrialized capitalist countries, and Second World, communist countries, and Third World is non-aligned, often developing nations. Okay, so next is evolving definitions. So over time, the term Global South has evolved beyond its geopolitical regions. It now encompasses a broader understanding of economic, social, and developmental challenges faced by countries in Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. So the term has been used to highlight global inequalities and emphasize a shared experience of economic challenges and development issues. So next is economic challenges. So countries in the global south often face economic challenges, including poverty, limited access to education and healthcare, high unemployment rates, and dependence on agriculture. So structural inequalities, historical legacies, and global economic dynamics contribute to the economic disparities between the global north and the global south. So it's social and developmental issues. So social and developmental issues in the global south include issues related to healthcare, education, gender equality, and access to basic services. So many nations in the global south grapple with issues such as political instability, corruption, and environmental sustainability. So these challenges impact the overall well-being and development of these regions. So next is contemporary perspectives. So contemporary perspectives on the global south emphasize the need for international cooperation, fair trade practices, and sustainable development. So advocates argue for addressing issues such as debt relief, technology transfer, and climate change mitigation to promote uh, equitably global development. So the global south is seen not just as a geographical category but as a grouping that shares common concerns in the face of globalization. So to conclude everything, the concept of the global south has evolved from its Cold War regions to become a nonsense and dynamic term encompassing economic, social, and developmental challenges. While progress has been made in some areas, the global south continues to face complex issues that require global collaboration and a re-evaluation of international economic and political structures to achieve sustainable and inclusive development. That's all. Thank you.
Define the term Global South. The term Global South refers to a grouping of countries that are located primarily in the southern hemisphere and are often characterized by lower levels of economic development compared to countries in the global north, which are typically located in the northern hemisphere and more economically developed. The global south includes four countries. First is the Africa, Latin America, Asia, and Oceania. Differentiate the global south from the third world. Global south typically refers to countries located in the southern hemisphere that are economically less developed. Global south, due to its economic development status, are shared challenges with countries in the southern hemisphere. So global souths represent namely agrarian economy, meaning sa agrarian economy is an economy where majority portion of the income or main source of income of individuals is made from agriculture. Global South characterize poverty, tyranny, political instability. So, what ay political stability like sa Western Bloc nga kuan sila na sila political stability, and what ay regularity of the flow of political exchange. Tyranny means a government in which all power is in the hands of a single ruler.
Analyze how a new conception of global relations emerged from the experience of Latin American countries. So, the emergence of a new conception of global relations in Latin American countries can be attributed to various factors. Historically, these nations faced colonialism, economic exploitations, and political intervention, shaping their perspective on global interactions. In the 20th century, the movements of independence and a desire for self-determination fueled a re-evaluation of their roles in their international arena. Latin American countries began emphasizing diplomatic and economic diversifications, seeking partnerships beyond traditional alliances. So regional organizations like CELAC and UNASOR strengthened collaboration, fostering a sense of shared identity and interest. Economic shifts, such as the rise of commodity exports, allowed these nations to engage in global trade with a more assertive stance. Other example of regional organizations is NAFTA, or North American Free Trade Agreement, an agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States to eliminate trade barriers and to facilitate economic cooperation. So, other example is GCC, or Gulf Cooperation Council, So, cooperation among Gulf countries such as Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates in areas like economic development and security. So, the experience of Latin American countries has prompted a call for more equitable and inclusive global governance structures, challenging traditional power dynamics. Issues like environmental sustainability, social justice, and human rights gain prominence, influencing their diplomatic strategies on the global stage.